Hello, everybody. So we will start the second roundtable of this morning, titled Multidisciplinarity, Inclusion and Pedagogy, How to Innovate for Sustainable Fashion in Europe. So we will reduce the scale. Let's introduce our speakers. Maybe you will start.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jean-Baptiste. I'm the CEO of a group of fashion school named IFA Paris. So IFA Paris has a campus here in Paris. We have a campus in Istanbul. We have another one in Shanghai. Across the three campuses, we have close to 1,500 students. IFA Paris was created in 1982. So last year we celebrated our 40th anniversary. I would say we have two, let's say, specializations, although I don't really like the term, and we can talk about it later during the roundtable, but we have programs in design and program in business. About 4 years ago, actually, and that goes back to what you were saying earlier on about having some people answering questions, and that's how you did the moderation of the previous roundtable. So we did too. 4 years ago, we sent a questionnaire to our graduates, to the companies that were recruiting our graduates and our current students, and asking them, okay, so what would you like us to do? Like, if you had a magic wand, like what type of program would you like IFA Paris to put in place? And overwhelmingly, they had two answers. One was fashion tech. So we developed a program in fashion tech, an acceleration program, a fashion tech lab, and the other one was sustainability. And I guess we're definitely going to talk about sustainability today. And so we've been creating an undergraduate program that is entirely dedicated to fashion sustainability. We are moving towards becoming a school that is an RSE, so CSR certified school. And I believe that's why we are here today, because, you know, sustainability is really at the core of our preoccupations and our strategy.
Thank you. So we can conclude that New Jane, they are particularly interested in
Yes.
fashion tech and sustainability. Okay, interesting. Frédéric?
Hello, I am Frédéric Thureau, and I am co-founder of the TCBL Textile and Clothing Business Labs, which has been around for about 7 years now. And that is a network of labs and companies that is working to make the transition between the current textile and clothing sector and to make it more sustainable in 3 directions. Care for the planet and being more environmentally friendly, care for the people, and making less damage with the people working behind in the industries and things that were mentioned this morning in the before roundtable, and also transition to make it to make it valid in terms of economy. More from a value perspective than a price perspective. TCBL, Textile and Clothing Business Labs, is also working in different programs which are supported by European funds. And one of them, and all of them are tackling with sustainability, generally speaking. One of them is the She Makes program, which ended in December 2022, and which was definitely something about alternative education for girls and women to learn about tech-based sustainability for fashion.
Thank you very much. So my first question is, what have you observed in your various positions about the conditions that foster innovation? Because we always mention the innovations themselves, but what about the context which can allow those innovations to come?
Would you like me to answer first?
Yes, sure.
Okay. A few things. First of all, I would say the environment, but then there's the tangible definition of the environment and the intangible. The tangible one, the physical environment for us at IFA Paris, is really to allow students to have spaces to discuss, to do their work. And I love our lecturers, and they are, you know, they have a lot of expertise, but what I notice is that most of the work, most of the creation, and most of the innovation is actually done after classes, after 6 p.m., when the students are inhabiting spaces that we have in the campus that are dedicated to them, and you have different kind of students that are collaborating and helping each other. So you're going to have, for example, third-year students in the Bachelor of Fashion Design that are helping first-year students solving some design issues, bringing them some ideas in order to develop proper solutions that they wouldn't have thought about, basically. So that's the tangible part of the environment. The intangible part is the culture itself. We have about 50 different nationalities that are represented in school amongst the student population. So it's literally a meeting of different minds, different cultural frameworks as well, and it provides an amazing dynamic as well to creation and to innovation. And I think the last aspect that is, in my opinion, a driver of innovation is also trying to reinvent the industry you work in or that you're going to be working in. So we're talking about fashion, and obviously when we have young students that are coming over into our schools, or even young designers that are studying in fashion houses, their dreams are always to do beautiful things, like beautiful designs. But maybe the term beautiful needs to be redefined, and fashion needs to be redefined. So it's always very interesting to look at fashion as a language or a tool to solve issues. And, for example, for us, we are very interested in looking at adaptive fashion, developing collections that are aimed at creating clothes for people that are suffering from disabilities, for example, or looking at fashion as a way to create cohesion around the idea of migration, for example.
Thank you. Would you like to?
Yes. Well, that's very interesting, and I'm going to go towards the same direction. I think there are different meanings of innovation. Innovation is not anymore the sort of classic innovation that is starting from a very specific lab, which takes time to be developed and which is very sophisticated. And 3 years later, it's translated into something which is happening into the textile and clothing sector. I think the innovation has changed a lot and has become much more agile, much more hands-on, like you have an idea, you prototype it, you test it, and you refine it. And it has become much more open source, with a lot of people using open source templates, being able to adapt them to their own problematics or issues. And it has become a lot more collective, which is what Jean-Baptiste was saying a lot. It is true that if we are together and if we are a crowd, we are more supported into developing innovation because we dare more. We are backed by people who can be experts, who can be at the same level as we are, but they help us go forward into innovation. And this is exactly what we have experimented in 2 years in the SheMakes project. We had workshops with women who hadn't touched anything about textile or fashion and fashion tech. And before we were working with them, they were saying, "Oh, we are not going to be able to do that." And afterwards, they were able to mount an open source machine to do something on null, or they would be able to code something in a garment that was helping them play with music. And suddenly they realized that because of that collective force that was behind them, they were really able to go forward. They were able to go behind and say, well, I did it. I did it with the collective power, with the expert power, with the mentorship, and with the lab space, of course.
So it's very interesting, this idea of the ecosystem, the surrounding, the collective behind to favor innovation. But when you talk about sharing, I guess for the people here who have a company, it's not always obvious to share what you are working on, because even in your own network, you can be scared that someone will not play the game and will rob your ideas to do something and not reward your investment to make, because it's always different when we talk about students and when we talk about businesses. Yeah, so how would you advise someone in a company to proceed to keep the advantage of the collective, but not take too much risk regarding this issue of confidentiality?
Well, this is a very crucial question, Alice. The thing is that you cannot do things like that with everyone, and you have to select the people you are working with on shared values. So if your value is about trusting each other, and if you have the reciprocity, and if you build these partnerships together in the long term, that works. Because partnership, and I am always telling some of my students, the problem is not what you share. The problem is what you are doing with what you share. So it's a very Asian mindset, which is you are always pushed to be able to go beyond what you have been sharing. But obviously, if there is not enough trust right from the start, if there are not enough shared values right from the start, that cannot be achieved, definitely.
All right. Yes, this is why in the digital the free licenses have been created, I guess. So my second question is, acceleration is one of the elements of the European Innovation Council's 2023 program. In order to accelerate the transition of the industry, which actors do you think, which stakeholders do you think should be involved?
I mean, of course, I'm going to tell you schools. But, you know, even in the previous panel, we heard a lot the term education being repeated. So, you know, it's not only about educating consumers, educating company, but it's also about educating the future leaders of the future as well. So without talking about fashion schools or even IFA Paris, we're in France. And so traditionally, we've always had a reputation of excellence for education that is kind of being questioned for the past 10 years. I mean, we're having a look at the rankings that we have, like the PISA rankings that are based on our agility around mathematics, for example. I mean, I'm saying ours, but it's really like students from high school. So where is our education going at the end of the day? Because I feel, you know, I interview a lot of students from different countries, like even European countries that are enrolled in IB programs, for example. And at the age of 18, when they choose a specialization in business management, for example, they already know concepts like ROI, break-even, financial projections, concepts that, honestly, I didn't even start studying until I was in business school. I did a prépa HEC, so you know, for me it was super foreign. I could quote philosophers and writers, but I didn't know those essential terms at the end of the day. So I think really it's about, in terms of one stakeholder, it's really like the education, probably the Ministry of Education as well, to look into what is being done overseas and actually changing our programs and take a risk. We were talking about risk earlier on, not just to focus on the basics. The basics are important, French literature, mathematics, but actually try to project high school students in the future as well, to give them the proper tools to be able to innovate and to be part of the acceleration in Europe.
Thank you.
I am going to complete that with, of course, I'm coming from the alternative education system. Because as I mentioned before, the lab space is a place for alternative education. And the reason for that is, you know, it is so difficult to get accreditation when you want to transform the cursus of the students, that you have to do it differently. But further about your question, Alice, is the idea of actors who can build this innovation. They are everywhere. They are also in companies. They are also in you know, different subgroups of companies. Of course, innovation is big industrial companies have the money to invest, but
time.
Pardon?
Time and money.
Time and money. But sometimes what they want to invest into is going to have a backlash on their industrial scale, and they prefer to reduce the investment or to concentrate on the investment that is, as we said in the former roundtable, which is really about efficiency. From my experience, and particularly in the HereWare project, which is about the uptake of a bio-based, local and circular sector in the textile and clothing sector in Europe, my experience is that there are other actors who can be very important to support innovation in a multidisciplinary way, which are large SMEs who have enough money and enough security to be able to invest, but also enough agility to let people do things at their pace. And I remember a couple of years ago, we were working with LTC, Les Textiles de Charlieu, with IFM, Institut Français de la Mode, and we did a lot of projects with them because they were in that kind of position. In HereWare, we can find that too, because we have been working with large SMEs. But there are also ecosystemic innovation, and I come back to my value sharing standards. We are working with territorial ecosystems. We had a very big workshop, one-day workshop with Atelier Luma in Camargue, in the south of France. Atelier Luma is working on a bioregion concept and trying to integrate the actual plants, the rice, the invasive plants, the transformation, the fiber, the textile, and the waste resources. And this is also a very powerful way to innovate together in a same territorial region. And there is a third element, or there is a fourth element of innovation, which is the long tail. You are all familiar with the long tail situation, which is and independents and very small actors can come together on the platforms and work within their diversity, and they can innovate respecting each other and being complementary and being excellent in their field and being and forming a chain which can be together very innovative and very progressive.
Thank you. So in the title of the roundtable, we mention 3 elements: multidisciplinarity, inclusion, and pedagogy, which are often quoted as drivers of innovation. In your experience, are these elements indispensable, and what other factors would be important? Would you like to add something to this list?
Not necessarily add, but maybe provide some examples. And, you know, earlier on we were talking about fear of designers or companies that, you know, would feel challenged by other companies that they would collaborate with, and then, you know, they would fear that their ideas would be stolen at the end of the day. But, you know, we are talking about sustainability. We had a great roundtable earlier on, and I think personally what I got from the previous roundtable is that without multidisciplinarity and without collaboration, you can't advance the cause of sustainability, right? So multidisciplinarity is essential. I was talking earlier on about the need to redefine fashion and not just look at it from a sort of superficial perspective and, you know, just consider it as a frivolous or seasonal industry. We collaborated, for example, 2 years ago with an association called My Human Kit. I don't know if you heard, yeah, you heard about it. And so this association was created by someone who actually lost his forearm. And he had 2 choices. It was either he would get like a super sophisticated new arm at the end of the day, and so a prosthetic, that would cost 45,000 euros and would not be reimbursed by Social Security in France, or he would get like a standard prosthetic that was reimbursed by Social Security in France, but that looked like a hook, basically here. You had nothing but a hook. So he decided to create his own association to create prosthetics that can actually be 3D printed. We worked with the founder of this association. We put together some fashion-forward prosthetics that could be 3D printed, and the designs are actually available on open source. So I love that sort of framework from our students as well, and what they have created, because they have no problem sharing their designs with the rest of the world, because they feel, why not putting my creativity to contribution and ensuring that people can actually download this design for free and 3D print it by themselves. We talk a lot about inclusion as well. So how do we manifest inclusion as well? I was telling you earlier on that we work a lot on fashion and migration. Now it's the 5th year that every winter term we invite a group of refugees to work with our students from the MA in Contemporary Fashion Design, and together they build an eco-designed and eco-produced collection on the idea of fashion and migration. So what is it, migration? I mean, our students are coming from 50 different countries to study in Paris. And then on the other side, we pair them up with refugees. Clearly, the context of their arrival in Paris is very different. But at the end of the day, they're all motivated by the same thing: change, making a better future for themselves. Astoundingly, they face similar challenges in terms of integration. So it's really about using fashion to build bridges between groups that you never thought will come together. So that's why, I mean, to me, multidisciplinarity, inclusion are extremely important.
Thank you. Frédéric?
Yes, about inclusion, again, coming back to the She Makes project that we finished, we realized that working with girls and women was not only a matter of gender. You know, when you think about the textile and clothing sector, you think, well, that's a female sector. You know, 75% of the employees are female, 50% in the textile. So why should it be an issue?
Just to complete what you're saying, yesterday we had a panel conversation with named Sourcing in Ghana, and it was said that many of the CEO of the top textile company in the countries are women, which is not the case in France. In France, I mean, it's true that we have plenty of women entrepreneurs creating startups, new businesses, but regarding the startups, it's not at all the majority. And regarding the top, like the big, the SMEs, but not the SMEs, but the middle companies, middle-sized companies, most of them are led by men, especially in the industry. And in Ghana, it's not at all the case. That's funny to note. So you said, yeah, certainly in France we have this image that fashion and textile is a female sector. But first, it's not that true, because who is deciding on the top of it? And second, I think it's cultural.
Absolutely. In She-Makes, we were working in 16 different countries in Europe, ranging from Spain to Moldova to UK to Italy to blah, blah, blah. And what we were facing is exactly the fact that you are saying, that even in Europe, the probability that there is a transformation between people working in the companies and women being at the top of companies is very low. There is still a lot of glass ceiling and self-stereotype and things like that. But among the 16 countries we were working with, definitely the northern countries were more gender fluid than the southern countries. So that, but beyond the fact that, you know, the question is about, is inclusion an issue or not? We also assessed that the values which we decided was key in this project, which was welcoming differences, was very key to support innovation. And we have seen that in I have seen that in other contexts, like in Willa Incubator in Paris, meaning that diversity means change. Because if you lead a company and if you are diverse people, if you are a handicapped and a non-handicapped person, if you are a black and a white, if you are a man and a woman, if you are etc., etc. If you are from different culture, different religions, different beliefs, different backgrounds, if you have a textile specialist and a fashion specialist, then it's a lot more profitable to the company, because right from the start and right at the top of the leaders, there is already a debate on inclusion and democratic approach, which is the fertile humus for innovation. Because as Einstein was saying, innovation is not what you see now. Innovation is what you see out of the light. And if you don't have someone who challenges you to see outside the light, you cannot do it. And of course, same for here, where we managed to have temporary organization between very large biorefineries and very small SMEs in territorial companies.
Thank you. My last question is, what projects would you like to see developed in Europe and maybe elsewhere in the next few years in a perspective of transition of the textile clothing sector?
I think one of the what I would like to see, and I don't know if it's you know, about the transition in the textile sector per se. I mean, I can get that afterwards, but you know, we were talking about it with Frédéric earlier on, and we were talking about Europe. One of your question was, you know, about the Council of Europe making acceleration a priority, right?
For this roundtable, I have chosen the European scale because it's so true that Europe is investing a lot into ecological transition of the textile industry. So because of this, we have plenty of projects, emerging projects in the textile and fashion industry that are super innovative and interesting, and that and very much inspiring. And I was asking myself if it's like the European scale is particularly adapted for innovation, because we all know that it's simple to innovate when, as you said, you have several people in one room focusing on one specific topic and coming from different sectors and different paths. But what about the European scale? Like, it's so big, and there are so many cultural differences from one country to another. So for me, it's not that obvious to choose this precise scale to innovate. So that's why I thought it was interesting to focus on it.
No, and you're right. You're right. I mean, I don't know if the problem is the fact that we have a multitude of cultures, but you know, we're looking at Europe as a sort of a supranational level, and I think you're right in saying that there are a lot of initiatives that are done to make sure that we're championing innovation, but then there is no cohesion between the countries that are member of this network. I'll give you an example. Again, back to education, sorry, but I guess that's why I'm here as well. So we are talking about fashion tech. We are talking about sustainability in fashion. These are really new, let's say, industries, so to speak. I mean, I can't say that they're industries because we're talking about the fashion industries, but they're new themes, let's say. And so we have a few schools that are actually developing academic programs to ensure that we can train people that later on will work hopefully for Kering, or will work for LVMH, or will even work for, you know, startups. I mean, you know, Christine was talking about startups earlier on. And so they need to have their academic programs and their degrees that are recognized by the state. And the problem is that it's extremely difficult to have these degrees to be recognized by the state. We were talking earlier on about the fact that multiculturalism is extremely important for innovation. Well, if you are a French school that is actually teaching foreign students here in Paris, and imagine these foreign students are graduating and they do not work in France, but they work abroad, you cannot count them in your career placement data to make sure that these programs are being accredited, they're being certified, and then later on you can get more people interested, you can get more financing for research. So I think this is what we have to do, you know, at the center of it when it comes to education. And then I think when it comes to fashion, what I would love to see is to see more initiatives like UAMEP, for example, right, which is an association created here in France. It was created by Ariel Lévy. They are spearheading the entire movement of having a sustainable fashion week. They currently have opened a place where you can have emerging brands and emerging designers that are coming together to sell their clothes. And this is great that it's done by an association, but how about we have, again, more of a macro approach in order to foster young creation, emerging designers, and truly giving them the tools to develop their business?
Thank you. Frédéric?
Yes. Your question is terribly vast.
I know.
Of course, I agree with Jean-Baptiste. I agree also that there is a need to alternatives which are showing the way, and prototyping things that could be afterwards maintained as a legacy and as a sustainable new way of doing things. But bridging also the gap with the first round table,
Yes.
I think that we also have a lot to do about impact. And I was very interested. It was very interesting in the former roundtable to explore these issues, because impact is not only certification, tools that are monitoring things in silos. Impact is also a mindset that says that there is short-term, mid-term, and long-term systemic influences on the whole textile and clothing sector. And I think this is the most difficult thing to measure, is to understand that there are mechanisms of impact which influence the transition of the textile and clothing sector in the long term, and that we have to monitor not only with very specific numbers one by one, but also by business cases, by seeing 2, 3, 5 years later what has become of these initiatives. And I'm very pleased, for example, to know that Jean-Baptiste is saying that it is for the 5th year he's doing a program. And that's this kind of impact. If a business case, if a story, if a project is sustainable for a number of years, it means that it contributes to the change of the textile and clothing sector. And this has to be made salient in media, in conferences, in papers. So yes, this was my, this is one of my motto. And also to come back to what I think it was Christina was saying, yes, Christina was saying that all that business of certification is so costful that we have to envisage something more fluid or with a different perspective, so that everyone can be assured that they are going in the right direction without paying a fortune for being accredited, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. So we have more time because, of course, you are only 2 instead of 4. So maybe we can discuss further about the specific innovations that we can expect to come in the fashion and textile sector, because you were talking about, both of you, specific case, the pro-aesthetic, 3D printed pro-aesthetic, and the role that the textile industry could play into it, because, like, for instance, with the textile raw materials as something to help with this issue. And you mentioned the wearables made by women, but this particular kind of project is super, super hard to integrate it to the economy. And you mentioned in your introduction the specific points that you are working on with the TCBL. How can we expect this kind of very specific innovation, which require specific skills, several very precise skills that are not even taught in schools? How can we help those kind of innovations to bridge the gap towards the final consumers? And to, like, for instance, I'm thinking about another project, which is Pili, the ink made out of bacteria. For the moment, I haven't seen one single fabrics died with this kind of, like, I mean, at for instance, in a shop, like I don't know any brand using this particular technology because it's not ready yet, because it's so hard to bridge a gap toward the markets. So how can we work on this specific issue in your point of view?
You are true. It takes time. I started the conversation by saying that there were innovations that took long years. For example, I was talking to someone from the NSAD lab the other day about bacteria and printing with bacteria. So this will definitely take time. But what I believe is that in all the projects that we have been doing in TCBL, they have been, some of them have been kept and developed on a smaller scale in, for example, 3 different countries. A long time ago, we were developing a new cotton based in Greece, and we had a prototype project where we were helping cotton growers to make things which were of a better quality. We were supporting the people to clean it a bit more environmentally friendly. We were helping designers to use this fiber to design clothes, and this project has expanded in 3 countries around Greece, in Romania, in Italy, in some parts of Turkey, and things like that. So it has scaled in this area, and you're right, it is not at the scale of this big industrial scale that we have been used to for 50 years in, 500,000 meters of fibers. But I don't think it is a problem now. Because I believe that after the pandemics, which we haven't touched yet, which has accelerated a re-territorialization of the industry in some way, we can imagine that a different scale can be envisaged even to make an industry. And even if it is not entirely true, relocalization ideas in territories which could be 1,000 kilometers far from yourself, or can be Euro-Mediterranean, or can be multi-country relocalization, can be envisaged as a scale which would benefit for the industry and for the people who are around them.
Thank you. Would you like to add something on this specific point?
Yeah, maybe just something very short. I mean, when we talk about innovation, we always think of technology, but sometimes innovation is not about technology as well. I mean, Christina and Christine in the previous roundtable, Christina mentioned something about the lowest hanging fruit, right? So what's the lowest hanging fruit here? You were talking about ink that is made out of bacteria. Sure. But, I guess there are other processes as well. I was talking about the project that was made in terms of adaptive fashion for clients that are disabled. And, you mentioned something about the fact that, sometimes we need to think of the economic aspect of it. And it's really about changing our perspective, because we have an aging population. There are more consumers that are prone to diseases, to handicap. And actually, in terms of market value, well, there is a huge potential there. That's the first thing. And then the second, there are very, very easy solutions, to deal with certain issues. We don't have to develop new technologies all the time. Like, for example, we had some students that were working on developing a collection for clients that suffer from seizures. And they actually developed designs that actually have weights in them and that are leaded, because people that suffer from seizure, what provokes the seizure or what reassures them when they're in a seizure is to feel that they are covered, that there's a weight on them. So it doesn't require us to develop a new technology, but it's really about listening to what your potential consumers have to say. So sometimes innovation is also about listening and not necessarily trying to reinvent a wheel.
So it's the way we address an issue instead of a specific technology.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right.
And to complete what Jean-Baptiste was saying, for example, in Hereware, we are using prototypes which are actually working at the moment. We are using T-shirts and polo shirts and dresses and things like that, and we are demonstrating that with a bio-based, local and circular mindset, we can make fibers from wheat corn that can replace the polyester and can have the same qualities. We developed the fact that the designs of these products can be made so that it is recyclable a lot more easily, that it can be recycled for disassembly. And we are demonstrated that we can build an ecosystem which is multi-countries and which is benefiting from this multi-country. And this can go very quickly. I'm very, very surprised. I think the 2 years of pandemics have accelerated a lot this sort of realistic scale, even in big industries or traditionally big industries in the textile and clothing sector.
Thank you. So would like to ask if someone has a question in the audience to ask to our speakers. Anyone? No question? Okay, if there is no question, maybe I will ask you to conclude. Give a sentence to like not automatically an answer to our global question, because it's impossible, but something which resume your thought about it.
Okay, I'll try. We talk a lot about sustainability, and I think that's what our predecessors in the previous roundtable as well were saying, that we talk about sustainability so much so that we don't know what sustainability means anymore. So one of the component of the topic was inclusion, and I love that. And I think for me, the fashion of the future and how I see it and how we drive it is not necessarily a sustainable fashion, but it's a mindful fashion and a kind fashion. Like, I think the notion of kindness is very overlooked, just because we're talking about a business, just because we're talking about a thriving industry. But maybe it's just ending on a more sort of personal standpoint. But I hope that we can look beyond aspects of certifications and optimization and efficiency, and at the end of the day finding a way that again will turn fashion into a language that brings us together for a more mindful environment.
Thank you very much.
Well, innovation, and that's probably the motto of TCBL, innovation is about communities who share values, who want to engage themselves together into changing the world, who have access to alternatives, spaces and educations and diversities that help to support these innovations, and this goes in every project that we address, because we believe that whether it is through inclusion of gender, or whether it is about bio-based waste and circularity, or whether it is about matching people together, academia with companies in specific countries, we believe that this building these communities and engaging these communities is from the bottom and from the territorial who should have the key impact in the long term.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elise. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So thank you all. This afternoon we have a big conference about the next COVID sourcing, and we also have a trend conference in English. So thank you to all of you for your listening.